This is lovely.
It is more than a book,
Yeah.
right? It's really about challenging us to think before we act and consider the outcome of our actions.
Speaking to Raymond O'Keel, a life of transformation, purpose, and impact.
If I commit my heart to the Lord, I lived a sinful life, you know. You don't have a care in the world.
Yeah.
You just cross miserable and you're angry. You just vex mabudu. That was deep on the inside. The book says that our present situation, our present position is not necessarily our final destination. I grew up in the community of Sealats, and I remember there was this guy called Uncle Vidal. We used to call him Cheesy.
Okay.
And even when I would hang with the gang, with the boys, he would not say anything to me in that scenario.
Right.
Or they see myself, he'll always say, hey, you are greatness, you're better than that. That's the conversation, you know.
That's it.
Not do smoke, do drink, walk away from them fellas, they're bad, they're giving trouble. And those things resonate with me, and I think those are the things that the Lord would have helped to bring me to this juncture of my life.
Can we talk a little bit more about that? Because I know, if I'm not mistaken, you refer to your transformation as a divine encounter.
Yeah.
That's
Well, yeah. So growing up, quickly. Let me change quickly. I born, Paul of Spain. Grew up in Beach a bit. With my grandparents, were a more secure, shelter type environment. But however, my grandparents and my mommy had an arrangement. During the August holidays, she would get me for some time. As you grow, you are influenced. In Beach was a little more rigid, but when you come to Paul, it's been a little more freedom. My grandfather felt, again, we blame the environment, and he felt because of going to Sealats and stuff for holidays, I was getting rude, and he said, I'm not going back. But mommy came and she said she wanted me to go. And they went to the station, the police came, they make a decision. The police said, well, based on the arrangement, you have to send him. And I never forget that night, my grandfather said, pack everything, don't leave one hoof. Don't come back in my house. You know, and it was a long journey. When I opened my eyes to see that, I recognized that, wow, here is life, not just temporary visit. Here is life. And it was not Sealats as you know it today. Was that mang and water and real shack up and things like that. And it affected me mentally, but as a boy, I never used to talk. And it started to affect my ability to concentrate in school. And because I had this big why. Why? And then mommy left for the States, so I was practically on my own. Although I have an older sister, but you know, I come from age doesn't mean maturity. So I just began to really live life. I remember I said to myself, my mother and father did, you have to make life, right? And again, I had a few positive men around me. I can't say we didn't have, but then the majority or the hurt people tend to pull together and hang out together. And when you hurt and I hurt, I don't know how we could tell each other about healing stuff, right? and so I got myself involved in some activities. If I had to do it over, I would make different choices, right? And I used to dance too, you know, a little break dance. I went to a fete a night. So, you know, we have this community issues, these borderline issues. That didn't start now. It's just escalating. Okay. So Sealats and St. Paul, it's called the Pauls. We used to go down good one love. Right. But we went to dance and we bet and we threw the money in a pool. And because them fellas lost, well, they say, listen, run. And I remember we had to run. And the next time, maybe about 2 months after that, we planned to go back. But this time, you know, we used to say we went naked. I mean, you didn't have no weapon and thing. But now we're going clothed. And I remember, I was on the corner, Sealats there, right by the fish market. There's a little crusade that was happening. And I remember one of the guys said to me, you feel you can lead this wild life and join that church life? But I said, well, cuss, why is that a cuss? And then I heard a voice said to me, yes, nobody else behind me, I clear that. And I looked back and I was like, what kind of craziness is this? And then when I looked at him, the voice said to me clearly, everybody wants change, but nobody wants to change. You change and be an example. And I was real, you know, they say you're thirsty for a fete. So my cousin called, he said, don't come out, the thing red. I had an next fete, they put it off. And I just went back home and I sat down there and I said, God, I know much about you and this church, you know, but I need help. Because I'm telling you, I know the destructive part. I was going down. Because that night I had made up my mind, if I go kill somebody or somebody will kill me.
My goodness.
That's where I reached to, you know, thinking. And then I got up the next morning with a weird, strange feeling. You don't talk about regeneration is like the wind. You don't see the breeze with the sea, but you see a manifestation. You don't know where it's coming, where it's going. And from there on, God really began to do something on the inside. Still lineman, still, you know, hanging with the guys and stuff. But I just couldn't be comfortable anymore in the things that we were doing. And I made up my mind at the crusade. I remember the Friday. I said going up to that crusade. I know the pastor who preached because he's still my friend, like a father to me. I can't remember the whole message, but I remember when he said, you know, anybody willing to give their heart to the Lord. And I walked up between the crowd. You know, real people laugh. Even some folks in church give me 6 months, give me a year. Said, you on gears, you on trickery, you ain't gonna make it. But I knew then I made a commitment to the Lord. And I'm telling you, I felt literally like something, a burden, a heaviness was lifted off of me. And then my eyes, the understanding began to see things I have never seen in dimensions I've never seen before. And that whole thing about your self-esteem and having appreciation for who you are, as I read the Word of God, especially the book of Proverbs. And I saw, if you could control your tongue, you're a man. I saw guys use my tongue as a deadly dagger, you know, to hurt people. So all those things started reeling me in. And it said, the book of Ecclesiastes says, if you sharpen the axe, you use less effort. Wisdom and understanding is the principle there. And I say, listen, I have nothing. So I had to settle for whatever the job at the end. And I remember talking to the Lord. And the Lord said something very powerful. I'm telling you this. He said, I will assign you. And I will then qualify you in some places and spaces. And I started to find myself in places. I was like, nah, I don't want to be here. I'm not qualified at all. You know, it's like, wow. I started just committing my heart to the Lord and started to really walk in the level of obedience to the things that God wants me to do.
That is a powerful testimony. You now have the assignment of author, but with a book that is transformational. So let's go through that. The first thing that definitely seems quite interesting is the rag to riches. So break that down first.
I give you this in your hand. Now, look at the state of this.
Okay.
Now, let's have this quick talk, right? You don't know me.
No.
You come out the gate, and I offer you this. I tell you I want $100 for this. What will be your reaction? Be real with me. You don't know me.
You want $100?
Yes, I want $100 for this.
No, you gotta be mad.
Right. There might be much conversation.
No.
Right.
Why?
So why would you not give me $100 for this?
Because it looks as though it does not have the value of $100.
Right. Based on your perception.
Correct.
Right. Now, what this in a little bit?
Oh, that's nice.
So what just shift?
I mean, well, creativity and intention.
Right. All right. So at least tell me one thing you could use this for. One thing at least.
Real things I could use that for. I could use that to, I guess, if you want me to buy it when I buy the gate, I could use it to, I don't know, for my car, for the inside of my windshield when it starts to. Nice.
So that's the challenge now. How I'm thinking it's hard. So you see. Okay. So the source of your influence and the source of your information will determine your perception.
Okay.
So before I said to you, think about one positive thing. You wasn't seeing anything positive out of it.
No, I just want to know why you want $100.
Right. and so that's what it's about. You know, that way of thinking. Because I had to make certain sacrifices. I had to walk away from friends. Right? That sometimes you're on a lonely journey. I had to be vulnerable. I had to say, listen, I can't read that. I can't spell that. I don't know that. I've never been in those kind of environment. And you had to make these sacrifices sometimes. It's share vulnerability. I remember before I wrote the book, I said, nice, when I read the book, I'll come out and then I will share the story. And the Lord said, no, you will get the glory. I want you to share the story where I brought you from. So I will get the glory. So when the book comes, people know it's only God could have done something like that through your life.
And that is vulnerability.
Yeah. Every strand that is removed from the fabric, represent an issue.
Okay.
So if you look through the book, you'll see the strand of stress, strand of depression, strand of this, right? And it is defined. So when you go through the process, now you are equipped. Now you could be effective and now you could be efficient. So that's having the rose mentality. Talk about a resolute, organized, a sacrificial person who's equipped. It was just a workshop I used to do. And then I started to get called all over the place. And then one day I sat down sincerely and I said, God, I am not you. I'm not omnipresent. And then I just heard a book. I said, who? I said, I don't like reading. You tell me about a book. I'm very serious. Again, vulnerability.
Yeah.
And the Lord do put people in your life. And I had a good friend and I shared some thoughts with her. And she's like, come. And I sat down there and she said, you just talk. Because I the challenge I used to have is like thinking and trying to write it. I feel like I'm confused. I should just say, nah, I don't like that frustration, that feeling. And then we sat down there and, you know, I shared with her and she gave me back. And I came home and then I really began to just hear what the Lord saying, started to read, started to listen, started to make observation of things and then started pen it. And then there was an opportunity to do a course and I took the opportunity.
Wow. So this book, would you say it's sort of like a workbook, like a self-help book?
I would say that it's like a self-help motivational because of what it addressed. And it's not just the issues, but they have some practical principles, how you can start, move an idea, into a reality.
Okay. What are some of the issues?
Well, some of the issues we have here is like stress, some of the issues like low self-esteem, some of the issues like frustration, bitterness, anger, things that we may face on a daily basis as that's what you call real life scenario.
Right.
Look at the table of contents.
So we're looking at the rag mentality, the process. Strand of low self-esteem, strand of anger. That's something very important. Strand of fear, strand of worthlessness or uselessness, strand of abuse, which is sexual, verbal, physical neglect, strand of stress. Let's unpack those strands because we're talking about vulnerability. How was God with you during this process?
It was very emotional.
Yeah.
There are things that in your subconscious you feel that you have already blocked out, you dealt with.
Yeah.
But you have to come face to face with it and you have to now deal with it. So there are things I had to take a journey as far back down to my very childhood, things I could remember. And then it brought me back to that big question, the why. Why my father wasn't there for me. Sometimes I discover my anger issue was based on that because I felt I wasn't good enough because my father, well, he knows that, so it's not embarrassing to him, right? I'm his only child, that's what they said, and I couldn't believe that because of the struggle I had to go through. Those questions, you know, why? And my other stepbrother was like a male Cinderella, so he lived in the nice house, and I lived down in the slum. And so a lot of questions. You felt that you weren't good enough because of the things that was said to you. I gave a quick joke. So, because I grew up real, and I just using this word, I know you're on radio, I just tell you how I used to see myself. Skinny, right? You know, slim and slender. I used to see myself skinny and hard. And you're foreman, so my head was a little bigger than my body. So they used to call me Headley, you know? And then my eyes were down in that kind of socket, so they called me Donkey Eye. I wasn't sure in terms of how feet would have grown. So they were, you know, we just say K-foot, so that them one day my knees go make love to each other, right? So they call me knock knee. So they call so those things, those awful description of a person really got to me, and eventually I started kind of believe it, and you felt that you're the ugliest thing in the world, and you know your self-esteem was really low. I used to tell people maybe I used to sit down on the white line and still swing my foot on the road, right? That's how low you used to feel. You feel a sense of inadequacy, like you can't do anything, you can't achieve anything. And they say I'm feeling mad. I got in fights. I just smoke marijuana long. I just smoke this way. It's about to really cool my head and that's a thing. It's a drink and thing like that. But I started to do destructive medicating of myself. Yeah, because these are really emotions, and sometimes you just want somebody to talk to and just to hear you out. Sometimes in school, I might approach a teacher and say, Miss, listen, I watch any board, but I'm blanking out and things like, well, that is you'll make it through. I mean, I'm not, as I say, this is not an indictment, but because I want people to know, even churchy people in church are people who are being transformed, right, or living out the transformed life. I remember I said to a teacher, I went there and I shared my vulnerability because I felt a call, and I was like, listen, I don't want to go that path because I can't see myself in that path, but God knows best. And she said, well, may God help you.
Well.
She didn't say, come, okay, based on my skill set, we can work out a curriculum and do some classes and some courses. I wanted to coach, one thing, because I grew up really violent. I always had that kind of violent nature. Because again, the pain was really cry. And as I begin to submit to the Lord, and God helped me with that peace and that grace, and begin out through His power. First of all, to release my Father and release those who hurt me. I was saying, your Father, pray those who trespass against me. I remember the Lord said, pause right there.
Yeah.
If you want the release I have for you, you have to release people.
Yeah.
And I said, nah. I got it.
So many demands coming in from the big man.
Yeah. I say, I got here. I don't want to know no part of that. But as I say again, my first text I was sharing here, there's some young people I read fluently and with understanding, and then that pushed me now to go back and do my courses and things. Was the scriptures, was the Bible. And I remember when I read the Beatitude for my friends, they're like, where'd that come from? So I reckon it was there, but the hurt, the disappointment, the pain subdue all of that because it didn't make no sense. Because if you not empowered, equipped to manage those things, everything else doesn't make sense.
So, I mean, this is some really powerful testimony this afternoon on Lit Chat, that is for sure. And we're speaking to author Raymond O'Keefe, and we're speaking about his book Rags to Rose, but really also the power behind the book and why the book is here today. Because the reality is, just listening to you, and I've just been, of course, just going through some of the book, and I see here, always remember your present circumstance doesn't have to be your destiny. What would you like people to take away from this? How do you, I mean, because I'm assuming obviously you want to help people, right? Yeah, so what do you want?
Key thing for me is you're in this earth with a purpose, a divine purpose. And I'm saying this guardedly. It's not about your geographical location, your race, your family, origin, but it's about you as an individual understanding that you're here with a purpose and discover that purpose. And through the discovery of the purpose, you'll recognize the gifts and the talents. So you have a responsibility now to develop that, and the Lord will make room for you. You do not allow discouragement and do not allow despondency to control you. I always say this, if you allow feelings to control you, actions will follow. Amen. And if you put actions, feeling will follow. And know this, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the scripture says, and I believe this, what will it profit a man if he gain this whole world and lose his own soul? What can a man give in exchange for his soul? That hit me deep inside. I said, wait, now it's only the most valuable thing in you. I tell you this, I went and looked at the mirror, so it's not about amenities. Because you can have everything in this world and still be empty. You don't have the peace or grace, you don't have purpose. And I be honest, I came outside smiling, I mean, you grow up and you watch all these kind of superhero things. I remember I came outside, I was in Sealand, and I was like, we're around the world with my hands. So I still have a conversation with myself. And I can say that God has really helped me to build my self-esteem, build my sense of confidence and things like that. And so I really want to challenge people to know this. We don't have all the answers, but every time you wake up with the breath of life, God is saying you're good enough.
Yeah.
You understand? Yes, and you got to believe that. And don't try to self-medicate with anything that is destructive. That's the reality, because when those things subdue, you'll still come back to that reality.
That's the thing. It doesn't make anything go away. It's like a temporary numb.
Yes.
But unfortunately, sometimes the more we temporarily numb things, the more permanent they actually become in our lives.
And what you used to numb eventually become a way of life. Because it says what you give yourself to will master you. Don't forget that. So if you give yourself to things that are positive, eventually that will master you, But if you give yourself to things that are negative and destructive, that will master you too. And all of that, the power of choice. What is important, who you're allowed to influence you and who you're allowed to inform you.
So I like the fact that you mentioned the power of choice, because it takes me back to the rose mentality and the S, which is sacrificial.
Yes.
And sacrificial, it just goes hand in hand with making a choice.
Yes. That's understanding purpose. Anything that you recognize that is not fitting your purpose or your call, you have to learn to walk away from it.
That is one of the hardest things. Do you touch on that in this book?
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
Because that's a challenge,
Yes.
you know, and it's like, all right, you know this is your purpose. You know, God has already put that in your heart. You have all the talents, you've gone, you've developed it, and so much more. And then all of a sudden, something comes and goes, poof. And you're like, this look nice.
Yes.
So you have to be able to walk away and make that sacrifice.
And that's like about vision, and I talk about the book. It's when you have the vision, even though there are times when you might be distracted, but you don't allow the attraction to become a distraction. To cause a destruction. But you refocus. See a project positively impacting humanity.
That is a big one. The positive impacts on humanity.
Yes.
I know for sure this book already has, I should say, a positive impact on humanity, because you take something that I don't think we usually correlate, which is a rag and a rose, and even just sitting here and me going through some of these things, I'm like, I never thought of it that way. Where can we get your book, Raymond?
It's on Amazon. All you have to type in is RtR. You can reach out to me on the social. I am on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You can inbox me and I'll give you further information.
Any closing comments you have for our listening family this afternoon?
My closing comments: don't allow your attraction to be your distraction, to cause your destruction. The only way you could know that and be able to define that or discern that is that you have to have a vision. Remember, you are designed to create beautiful designs. Amen. You are important. This is no joke. You are the most valuable. The things around you, the amenities, doesn't make you who you are. You just use those things maybe to live here, to feel and to connect. Outside of that, what it profit you if you gain this whole world and lose your own soul? Remember this: nothing in this world can ever compare to the value of your soul.
Raymond, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here in the Talk City 91.1 FM studio. I'm hoping that we can have you back soon. I know that there are so many other things behind your name and your work that you have done to transform lives all over the Caribbean, and it's incredible. May God, and I'm saying this big and proud on the areas, may God continue to richly bless you, and may He also protect you as you continue to make transformation waves throughout Trinidad and Tobago region.
And I receive that big blessing, so
Good thanks.
that's the Rose mentality.